Jack and I decided we didn't have enough knitting machines, so we bought a vintage Corona 1500. Actually, the real purpose was to learn about this unique kind of knitting setup with the movable gate pegs. And here is what we have found.
This is a Corona 1500 knitting machine. It was also sold under some other names, including Passip and Genie. Let's go over some of the basic features which I am now learning. These buttons on the left and right, they're just alike, have 3 settings each. M, I think of it as M being for main knitting. This is where it is most of the time if you just want to do stockinette. A results in automatic patterning, and S is normally used when you want every other needle to be selected. At least that's the way that I have seen it to be used so far. Now, watch down here, in this area, when I alter the dial. It's going from S to A to M. Did you see things moving along here? Now note the assorted needle positions. A is all the way back in the rail like these. This is B, C, D, and E would be all the way forward like that. This machine doesn't knit anything from A, but it will knit from all the other positions, and it decides which to knit from by what you do with this dial. This is a normal stitch size dial. 10 is as large as it goes. 0 is as small as it goes, which is an unusually large range. Many machines don't actually have a 0. I'm finding that this TAM 3-ply Astracryl, it knits at stitch size 6 for me very nicely on this model. These are involved in the patterning, and this is such a clever design. If you select 4, the smallest number on the dial, 10 being the largest, and you have to push down to make the dial rotate. 4 means that whatever we do, we're going to have a pattern that repeats within a 4-stitch repeat. And so for the first 4 stitches in this row, I will pull some of the needles back. In this case, let's say 2 and 4. And it will repeat this pattern all the way across. So what I've done is arranged that every other needle will get pulled and selected all the way across. But in those 4 needles, I could do this instead. And in that case, every second and third needle out of 4 would be selected all the way across. So at the beginning of every row, you do need to set up, but it's quite speedy. And I could go all the way up to a 10-stitch repeat. You could get pretty elaborate with a 10-stitch repeat. I have only done small patterns so far, but you should see the manual. I was able to download one, and you would be too. A free CH1500 manual and a supplementary information manual, which is very, very important because it is full of charts that allow you to make just all kinds of interesting patterns with repeats as wide as this. Every row need not be like every other row, so your possibilities are getting close to infinity. There you go. One very cool feature of this machine is these needle strips. They come several with the machine, and each one of them has a different series of numbers, though each one marks the same needle positions on the bed. These are involved in helping you decide which needles to select at the beginning of this row, and then when you go to knit back from the other side, which needles are the corresponding needles that will continue the pattern as shown. So far, I haven't experimented with changing these out, but let's move the camera to the end. Here are some swatches I've made so far, inclusive of mistakes. I'm not any more perfect than you are, but I'm going to try to do some of these stitches in front of you, just in case any of you has a similar machine or is needing an entertainment of some sort. I did succeed at some tuck here. This is really an elaborate kind of tuck, but they call it fancy rib. Obviously, to get a true rib, you would need some purl stitches, and on this machine, since I don't have a ribber, there may be one, but I don't have one, I would need to reform stitches to get true rib. However, that effect is interesting on both sides. And as you see, I made some inroads into Fair Isle. Okay, next video, we'll knit. Moving the camera down here, you can see these are held in place by clips. So unlike the needle counting strips on most machines, these are made to come on and off. There's one of these on each side. It's called a return cam lever. And this is something we're pretty familiar with. It's like the 1-2 button on a studio, in that if the lever is in the all the way forward position, it knits needles back from hold, which is the all the way forward position. If it's back here, it leaves those needles in hold. The TC selector, it has multiple uses, but the most common one is to allow for simple tuck stitches very automatically. And I are going into the Corona 1500 that we just bought because it basically knits and it looked very clean, but it was having some intermittent problems, and we know dirt is usually the issue. And look what's hiding under the stitch dial. Greasy, dingy buildup.
And you can see that particulate matter that we were washing around.
Oh, yeah.
That we need to get out, and then under this slide.
So somebody had probably some years ago, because it did have grit on it, but it was surface like storage dust. But somebody had cleaned what they could get to.
The darkening right there.
I do, yeah.
That slide's been in that position for eons. So when you slide it, you see the discoloration under it. But I'm thinking that we have somebody is not springing back like they should. But
what's happening to me is that it's knitting really quite well, but it will occasionally tuck some stitches that should knit off. You know how aggravating that is. Here's what I've been knitting, and you see where I have manually fixed a few accidental tucks. Now I can get those evened up later. It's not a crisis, but it sure is annoying.